In July 1940, with France defeated, Britain and Germany are left to face off in what we now know as the Battle of Britain. With just the English Channel lying between them, the two nations engage in the first ever major military campaign to be fought entirely by air forces. Both are formidable opponents and inflict heavy losses on each other. So how did Britain clinch victory, and what critical decision caused Germany to fail? Let's find out. The Battle of Britain was the struggle that would determine who controlled air superiority. The primary objective of Germany was to bring Britain to a peace settlement and to end the war before it could escalate. The objective of Britain was to secure air superiority so Germany could not feasibly launch an invasion against them. Head of the Luftwaffe, Hermann Goering, believes that he and his Luftwaffe alone can bring Britain to the negotiating table. But his confidence is misguided, and so too is that of the German intelligence. Contrary to Goering's confidence, an air campaign against Britain was always going to be far tougher than many in the German High Command thought. Air attacks on Britain during World War I and the country's geography had led to a focus no longer solely on the seas, but the air too. Air warfare, though still in its infancy in 1940, was undergoing rapid innovations, and in some ways Britain led this change, developing the first ground control intercept air defence in the world. The British also had a well-oiled, integrated air defence, this being down to the foresight of Sir Hugh Dowding. They also had radar, something Germany lacked, thus giving them eyes upon the continent. This made it possible for British forces to see the build-up of aircraft across the Channel, giving them time to get their own planes off the ground and into position to encounter any threat that came to them. Radar stations and headquarters fighter command would also work closely together. It was a system far ahead of anything that Germany could muster at the time. This isn't to say that the Germans weren't prepared, it's just that this wasn't the war Germany had been preparing for. Their strength lay in the army. Even the German Air Force itself was designed as merely tactical support for the army. It had no heavy bombers, and the once feared Stuka was to prove almost useless in strategic air warfare. Both German equipment and tactics would be ill-matched for a war in the sky, as opposed to the ground. On the 18th of June 1940, Churchill delivered a speech to the House of Commons in which he noted, "What General Weygand called the Battle of France is over. I expect that the Battle of Britain is about to begin. Let us there brace ourselves to our duties, and so bear ourselves that, if the British Empire and its Commonwealth last for 1,000 years, men will still say this was their finest hour." In July 1940, the battle begins. Germany starts by attacking British convoys in the English Channel. More than 1,300 German fighters would battle around 700 British fighters. Though outnumbered, the British do prove a formidable opponent from the off, making good use of radar, prompting German fighter pilots to proclaim that the British always seem to be waiting for them. For Germany, the first weeks of the battle are grim. The Stukas, which had been so effective during the Battle of France, were now sitting ducks to the attacks on the convoys, and German losses consistently outweigh that of the British. Britain also had an advantage geographically too. Much of the battle was being fought over the British Isles. This meant that if a British pilot needed to eject, he could return to service pretty quickly, as indeed many did. But any German that did the same would be taken as a prisoner of war. Damaged British aircraft could also be repaired with greater ease, not the case for Germany, who were struggling with resources as it was. Maintaining their fleet was to prove both labour and time intensive. Under pressure, on the 1st of August 1940, the German High Command changed their strategy. A change that will have little effect and is changed just 12 days later, this time with the focus on British airfields and support installations. And this begins to work. The Germans were to prove adaptable at warfare again, and on the first day the Luftwaffe damaged 3 RAF airfields and put 1 radar station out of action. The next day, the 13th of August, the Luftwaffe launched its most audacious attack yet, Eagle Day. The Luftwaffe does take losses, but it does manage to inflict a significant blow to the RAF. The passing time also gives Germany time to dwell on their weaknesses in battle and adapt to warfare. By the 18th of August, British losses are increasing. More than 100 RAF pilots were killed in a week, and for Churchill things begin looking very bad. Despite the German strategic disadvantage early on, the poor intelligence, the lack of radar, the heavy losses, they were now gaining momentum. It's at this very point, however, that there is a pause. A mixture of weather and exhaustion on both sides sees a break in fighting, a break that will end on the 24th of August, as, on that very night, a German bomber flying over London loses its way and accidentally deploys bombs upon London, an action strictly forbidden by the German High Command. Citizens were not to be targeted. Warfare at this point was to be waged with the aim of peace, not escalation. It turns out that the bombs had been meant for military targets in London suburbs, but the damage was done. It is a mistake that shifts the future of the campaign entirely. Winston Churchill, enraged by the attack, orders an all-out attack on Berlin the very next night. But it's a risky move. The RAF is now near breaking point. The command and control systems had been destroyed, runways bombed, and the RAF was now just days of being operationally incapable of continuing the fight. But Churchill, convinced the attack on London was deliberate, attacks Berlin. The attack shocks the German people. They'd been assured that such an event could never occur, but now it has, and it was to happen again and again. Hitler reacts on the 4th of September, promising the German people reprisals for the attacks upon German citizens, and so begins what we now know as the Blitz. The Luftwaffe now fatefully shifts its efforts towards the terror bombing of London and other British cities. Despite the carnage that will rage on, it's this change in German operations that gives the RAF the vital time and breathing space it needs to repair their command centres and control systems, repair the damaged runways and build up their defences once again. Such is the damage in Britain that the situation will remain dire for some time. Here's a quote from the narrow margin. The position was grim in the extreme as, from August the 24th to September the 6th, 295 fighters had been totally destroyed and 171 badly damaged against a total output of 269 new and repaired Spitfires and Hurricanes. Worst of all, during the fortnight, 103 pilots were killed or missing and 128 were wounded, which represented a total wastage of 120 pilots per week out of a fighting strength of just under 1,000. Not exactly a great picture of success. Cities across Britain began to experience the consequence of war. The conflict would prove a huge challenge for Britain. Gavin Mortner, in his book The Longest Night regarding London, wrote, "The city's civil defences were chronically undermanned as the breezy enthusiasm of those who volunteered in 1939 cracked under the incessant bombing." Despite the ongoing challenge of the campaign, the real story, with the benefit of hindsight, is the attacks would only help unite Britain in the war effort. It's impossible to know how close Germany came to winning, but a study by the University of York in 2020 points directly to Germany's decision to move away from the bombing of the British airfields and to the terror bombing of UK cities. A fateful decision historians have long regarded as a huge error for Germany. This means that it's possible that the crucial mistake made on the night of the 24th of August 1940, when London was accidentally bombed, may have doomed the German campaign altogether. It certainly gave the RAF time to regroup during its darkest days. The bombing campaign didn't deter the people of the UK. Like that of Germany, it merely made them more eager to continue the struggle, which is the complete opposite of what Hitler wanted. In his opinion, it wasn't the public in the UK that wanted the war, but the politicians. He would say, "From London, I now hear a cry. It's not the cry of the mass of people, but rather of politicians that the war must now all the more be continued. In this hour, I feel compelled to direct another appeal to reason in England." This quest for a truce may also be the reason Hitler held off launching the Battle of Britain altogether. It wasn't launched on the 18th of June when Germany was at its most able and Britain at its weakest. Instead, he waited until the 10th of July, giving Britain more time to prepare a coordinated response. As to why Germany waited is open to debate, and how the campaign might have gone if Germany stuck to targeting Britain's airfields is also one of great discussion. But it is feasible that these two key decisions may have cost Germany the war altogether.